Getting the tape recorder. All right. We have some guests under new business. We have first item is Halls Road Improvement Committee recommendation. Please join us up here. So. Yeah, and grab another chair.
Bring a chair.
And just for Michelle, please, and the people on the phone, please.
Yep. I'm Edie Twining, the chair of the Halls Road Improvements Committee, and this is Kurt Porteria from the BSC group, who will be looking to be doing our master plan for us.
Okay.
Did you guys all get copies of these yet? This is their proposal, so.
I don't believe so.
I'll make sure everybody has
That's
it.
Thanks, Edie.
no.
So you have that one. This is the actual BSC proposal. Yep, you got it. Michelle, do you need one?
We have two other members of the Board of Finance back there,
Thank you.
and we have two on the phone. Which,
Thank you. Thanks.
You have an extra one?
So
Edie, do you have another one?
That's all I have.
Did you get one?
No, I don't need one.
Sorry.
Can
Did you bring any extra?
I have a spare that I'd be happy to give when we're done.
and well, if we need to generate it, send it out electronically, if nothing else, to.
Yeah, I can send that.
So. Okay.
All right. So we have interviewed with 3 firms, the Nelson Company and BSC and Robert Orr Associates. We got some fairly competitive bids around the same range and then went back and asked for further clarifications. And from the presentations, we sorted it down to 2 firms, Newman and BSC. And from there, when Newman went and filled in the details on what their engineering estimates would actually be, it was quite a bit higher, and then they attempted to bring their fees down, which we were worried that wasn't really going to get more project creep out of that kind of a situation. So BSC has worked very hard with us to assure us that they have the types of abilities that we're looking for. So the committee unanimously voted to have BSC be our recommendation for the master plan, and they came in at $46,500. I know there was $48,000 allotted to Halls Road several years ago that's been carried over a few times. So we're here to ask for your approval on that amount of money.
Tim, has this been brought before the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, last night we considered it, and after a robust discussion with both Edie and Kurt, we voted to recommend to the Board of Finance to designate the carryover of $48,000, not to exceed $48,000 for the study. And I think it would be fruitful to have Kurt say a few words, because he's been, I think, an excellent ambassador helping us through the Soundview sidewalk process, and he's been very patient with us. So I think that he can explain. I know there's concern on the part of, it was expressed last night as well, that the master plan is a big number, and what do we need to do to move forward? And I think they have a convincing argument as to why the master plan is a requisite. You know, we've gone through the Ale plan and other plans, and the budgets have had. I was trying to follow all the budget stuff over the years as to how much we put in and done, but here we are. So I think one major thing that we were told last night is that zoning seems quite receptive to perhaps change the zoning regulations vis-a-vis that road to encourage some new concepts there. That could be mixed use, that could be other zoning things that we're not even aware of, but I think they seem to be on board to want to give their approval to some zoning changes to help stimulate things that might not happen immediately. I think this is a long-range thing, and so if we have a roadmap, and I think the question will be, obviously, we've already gone through a lot of design, and this document in front of you is a testament to that. But they could explain, I think, why this new amount of $48,000, which would include a few dollars for incidental expenses, and I think a not to exceed amount that you'll see it is worthwhile. So we'll turn it back to Edie and Kurt.
Yeah, do you want to give the background of what brought us up to this point? That was helpful last night.
Okay, yeah. So we did originally, and we employed the Yale Urban Design Workshop. Their original proposal was for $26,000, and we did the first two phases with them and felt that they weren't able to give us enough attention for what we were looking for to present to the town. So the Halls Road Committee produced this document that is more in an understanding of what we think is about Old Lyme. And it actually was produced for free as opposed to any further expenses. And in doing so, we had 2 open houses in 2019 over the summer, and got a lot of feedback from those 2 open houses. People voted on things that they liked or disliked from what we were doing, and we were able to talk one-on-one with a lot of folks from the town. We've also presented this as a slideshow to, I think, about 6 different groups, including the zoning committee, which when they saw it, they suggested that we think about doing a village district on Halls Road. Right now, Halls Road is only commercial, so as things start to close up from COVID and from computer shopping, we're going to see things close down, and by allowing for residential and mixed use, that would allow the place to be redeveloped and investors invest in making it a more robust place. And if that happens, we want to make sure that the zoning is set up so that it can be done in a way that reflects the town of Old Lyme more. Right now, it's really kind of just a long strip of stores that don't really relate. There's 60-foot setbacks on that road. So it's all sort of about parking lots, and we're suggesting put the parking behind and have the street eventually come up to the street and allow for that. So that's a lot of the zoning changes, and that is in the proposal from VSC to deal with a market study, zoning, and of course the master plan that would be involved with understanding infrastructure and a lot more stuff that Kurt can fill in for you.
That was great. That was very well said. So to pick up on a few things that Edie said, really this process, and I do want to underscore the fact that it's a process. There's master planning, and then the result of that process is the master plan. So it's an iterative process that will pick up where some of the previous planning took place. It will assess and validate some of the concepts that were presented in there. It is very comprehensive. So we're going to look at things such as the real estate market. What could Halls Road support? What is the market demand? As Edie mentioned, the market is changing now with e-commerce and those kinds of things. What can the market support out there? Is there a latent demand? Latent demand means, for example, with housing, if there was some sort of housing out there, and of course we would look at Well, what does that mean? What type of housing? What density? What style? We want to make sure that this plan sets a roadmap for not only what's there, but how it's there. How does it look? There's going to be design guidelines involved, and that all relates to the zoning, that it's ultimately the town's tool that it uses to control how development happens out there. So it's a very comprehensive plan. It starts off with that real estate assessment. We also look at the infrastructure out there. It's a state road, so DOT controls the road. We'll interface with DOT throughout the process to find out, do they have any future plans for that road? What types of things would they allow to be modified to support some of the things that Edie was mentioning, housing and modifying other things. Anytime you're embarking on something like this, there's many, many, many moving parts. This master plan assesses all those parts, analyzes how they all interplay, and ultimately, as I mentioned, the master plan that results from that creates that roadmap using all the data that was gathered during the process to create the design standards and the zoning, with the hopes that once those things are in place, you can attract some private development, whether it be businesses, new businesses, enhanced businesses, and even some of those added residential components. The town can set the stage for that, but ultimately the goal is to enhance private developers to come in and say, that's a great area. Old Lyme is in a wonderful place geographically. I grew up next door in East Lyme, so I know it well. Halls Road is a great area if we can set the stage for the right kind of development. And the right kind of development is whatever the town of Old Lyme wants it to be. And that's where that zoning and the design standards become very important to what does it ultimately look like. And again, because all those things interplay and affect each other, this is a process where we analyze all of those things, and at the end of the process, package it all up so there's this clear roadmap. And as Tim mentioned, this is something, and it's very common for this to be the case, this is something that could happen once the master plan is done. It could take 10 to 15 years. But it's a roadmap, and it makes sure that the vision of what is to be is already defined, so the development does not happen out there in a piecemeal manner. That's the worst thing that could happen. Because of the way things interplay, one thing could affect another thing in a negative way, and it all just kind of falls down. So this really presents that roadmap in a very comprehensive manner that the town can then use to guide what happens out there over the next 10 to 15 years.
Questions from anybody on the Board of Finance? I mean, I would think one of the challenges, you just talked about how certainly the last year has changed the way things are. It makes it very difficult to look out 10 or 15 years because who knows what other things are going to change in the next 10 or 15 years. You know, a plan that's developed in 2021, I'm sure it'll be looked at over and over and over again. Jude?
Tim, did you have this document yesterday in advance of your meeting? I feel like it'd be nice to be able to read it.
Yeah.
You didn't have it ahead of time? Okay.
Yeah, was it September? Yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging to be handed something at a meeting. And granted, you know, it's,
I apologize.
well, but it's, you know, on the other hand, it is your committee. Your committee has gone through this, and it meets the scope, the plan. You've looked at 3 different proposals, and this is what meets.
3 versions of this from each group, so
right.
we kept fine-tuning it until we
and
got to
that's,
something we thought
you know,
was...
the bottom line is, this is, at this point, what you think needs to be done, and this is the price to get it done. I mean, it contains a lot of information here, and, you know, then
And also, I can send more of these. I brought this to the selectmen meeting last night. This kind of gives you a much more quick synopsis of what the phases are about.
Yeah.
And what the expectations are. I'm
That,
sorry.
that would be very, I mean, you
I
know,
didn't
again.
realize how much I should be bringing.
Well,
sending ahead
and
of
it's
time.
honestly, in advance is helpful, because
Okay.
getting
I will
information
know that.
like this at a meeting is challenging, because we have to
Yeah,
listen to
you can't
you, and we
read
can't
that.
pre-read it.
Yeah.
If we had seen it before, we might have had
If not, it's
better
possible.
questions.
Do you
Okay.
want to just read this? It's not that long.
Hey,
David? Go ahead, Dave.
yeah. Andy, a couple of questions. First of all, yeah, we didn't get anything up front, so we don't have a timetable. I'm not sure whether the scope was developed by the Halls Road Improvement Committee or whether it was asked of the consultants, like, here's our ideas, give us what happens. This is a little bit unique, too, in terms of a master plan. And a master plan, I mean, I think that there is a general consensus in the community that there's some low-hanging fruit here that's very easy to achieve. And I guess, you know, as I've remarked in the past to a number of folks, like seeing the same signs at 45-degree angles 2 years from now, after spending 50 grand, is going to be kind of disappointing. So a master plan 2, I'm wondering if the zoning changes. I have been very supportive of the flexibility for private owners. This is not a brownfield, and it's not a cornfield getting developed. This is a vibrant, privately owned commercial area of our town, and it makes it a little bit of an odd duck to impose a master plan upon it, because if you do a master plan, there is a balance between creating basically existing non-conforming uses, which would completely destroy the ability for people to sell their properties, and giving folks the flexibility to do something different, right? And so if you have a master plan that wants most of the buildings ultimately 15 or 20 years from now to be closer to the road, 10-foot setbacks and all the parking behind, and flexibility for multifamily, which is a little bit easier to achieve. But if you say, if somebody tears down, you know, where Dunkin' Donuts is, and the only way they can rebuild is if they're 10-foot, you know, back from the right-of-way from DOT, then that's very restrictive, obviously. So there are a lot of very complicated components to a master plan. We're spending, call it $50,000 on a master plan, and I don't have a sense that there's a timetable to achieve the low-hanging fruit prior to some master plan that has its own very significant kind of unintended consequences, if you will. So that's my soapbox. Look, the money is carryover money, so happy to engage and see what somebody comes up with. But I really, really, really feel strongly that there should be, first and foremost, a timetable and set expectations after we go through, you know, what is already kind of a done deal with the 50 grand.
What is the low-hanging fruit you're referring to? I'm just not sure what that means.
45-degree angle signs, 5 different of the same signs that are, you know, down the road, telephone poles that could be moved, sidewalks, all sorts of different things that feel like, hey, let's do a survey, let's see where the easements are, let's talk to the DOT, and let's get moving on a project. Very similarly to what Kurt and the guys have done down at Soundview, which didn't have a master plan. It was much more of a site plan, if you will.
Yeah. Do you want to talk to that?
A few things. This study will absolutely include the sidewalks, and something that did come up last night relative to that particular issue was that we're not even sure presently where sidewalks could go. So they're a piece of what I call core infrastructure of a downtown area. So as part of this...
That's why you need to start with a survey. That's why you start with a survey.
Sure, and that'll be part of our scope of work. Another key element that I didn't mention was through this master plan process, another element is development of some conceptual designs, which would include the sidewalks, and last night we talked a little bit about the crossing with the ped box and those things. A key goal of this master plan process is to set the town up for funding, whether it be through lot SIP or community connectivity or steep grants. That's where that conceptual design, which occurs kind of near the end of this process, will allow you then to have materials that are backed up by this study that can then be used to submit for grant applications. That's how you'll get some of these core infrastructure improvements, like sidewalks and those things, paid for. So by going through this process, producing those plans, you'll be ahead of a lot of other towns because you will have done your homework, and DOT, Federal Highway, the sources of these funds, looks at that. They like to look that you've done a study, that the plans you produce from that study are based on good data, and this is really all about data collection and data analysis. So another key component of this, I mentioned the private development, you have no control over that. You can just create the platform and hope that those people come in. But the other element is this will set you up to go pursue funding with primarily DOT. It's their roadway. If you can show them the vision that you have, and again, we'll be talking to DOT numerous times during this process to make sure that they understand. We try to make them part of the process, if you will. That will bode very well for the town when it comes time to seek funding to actually start doing the physical improvements out there.
Well, I agree with that. I think we've been at the process a long time, and it's unclear whether anyone has talked to DOT at this point. But one final point is, just to be clear, this $48,000 or $46,500 or whatever it is absolutely includes a survey by you guys of the areas that we're talking about. Is that correct?
Do you mean discussions with the businesses?
Do you mean a land survey, David?
No. I mean a land survey of where the easements are, where we are today.
It does not include that, Dave.
And upon that, pardon?
It does. There's a list of things, and again, you don't have the document, but on page 6, it talks about the things that are not included. And the number one thing is land surveying or boundary surveying, that it does not include.
So it's taking its information from some original documents from the Yale Urban Design Workshop that were CAD drawings that show the whole area in AutoCAD.
It's okay. If there's no survey, that's all I need to know. That's all right. Thank you.
And I will tell you that we will be producing base mapping using the material that Edie had, using the 2016 State of Connecticut orthophotography, which gives us topography and those things, as well as DOT right-of-way mapping that we maintain in our database because we do a tremendous amount of land surveying in-house. So we'll be producing that mapping. The land surveying at this point, from my experience, you don't need that level of detail yet because we have enough available information to create the base mapping that we can use for this, as well as our conceptual designs. Once you identify what type of specific project you'd like to pursue funding for, you could then embark on those kinds of things. But my opinion is, let the funding agency potentially pay for part of that or something. Let's hold off on that until we really need it. So I do want to stress, we will have
obviously
mapping.
David?
Yeah, but utility easements and those sorts of things. You've got obviously DOT information, but not utility easements and those sorts of things, which are obviously an important part of the whole corridor. So.
Yep, and we will get all that information because as part of our master plan, we will be interfacing with all the utility providers to find out what infrastructure exists out there today, what are planned future upgrades potentially out there today. So right now, primarily most of the utilities are above ground on poles, et cetera. Most of them are owned by Eversource, some are owned by the former SNET. But we will interface with our contacts. We deal with these people almost on a daily basis. We will get their mapping and their information. All of that will get put onto that compiled map. So we will go into this eyes wide open with regards to that.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Other questions? So I'm not sure, again, having received this tonight is challenging, yet to Mr. Kelsey's point, we have money that's been carryover, that does fall within that budget. Nicole's sitting there nodding her head because it's about $48,000 that is in carryover. And this is for $46,500. So.
Well, last night we reviewed and it said there would be some additional expenses that's why we rounded it up to 48 because if they have to reproduce or mail and whatever, there might be some incidental things, and I think Kurt agreed that the postage meter might stop at 48,000.
Yeah, it's small, but we can't predict those costs, so we always just charge them at cost.
Okay.
FedEx, those kinds of things.
BJ.
Andy, I agree that it would have been nicer to have the proposal in advance, but given that the Board of Selectmen has reviewed, I assume carefully, and proposes to the Board of Finance that we authorize the expenditures and that it is a carryover. And finally, I just quickly skimmed this, and it seems like a pretty impressive proposal. I do think I'm comfortable that the Board of Finance can make a decision tonight without having each of us review this in detail.
Well, I don't disagree with you, BJ. As I said, our Halls Road Improvement Committee has brought this. I mean, it's a, town committee. They've spent a lot of time on this. So I guess I would, Janet.
I just wanted to remind Tim of some of the headaches we experienced with that Church Corner project and dealing with the utilities and the time it took to do what we thought were fairly simple things, and it can turn out to be very different.
Yeah, there was a fiber optic that goes from New York to Boston that went by the Congregational Church that everybody was very afraid of. If you broke that, the world would stop.
Right in old line. Does anybody care to make a motion to?
I'll make a motion to 48,000 for the project.
From carryover.
I'll second.
Seconded by Anna, thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thanks for your time.
Andy, I'm going to abstain.
You're going to abstain, David?
Because I own property in the corridor.
Okay. Please note Mr. Kelsey abstains. Great, thank you very much.
I apologize for not having this up front. This is
Well,
all new to me,
it's helpful to us.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Of course, it makes perfect sense. I should have had it.
Yep. Thank you, though. Thanks for your work on this. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is White Sands Beach Association request. Chris. Thanks for coming out tonight. I don't know if you got volunteered by Alan or?
I kind of did, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate you coming out.
I am the other than Alan, the other sole board member who's a full-time resident, so I got tabbed.
Great. And he found himself busy tonight.
Yes, he did.
So we did get a letter earlier in the month. I think I forwarded it on to members of the Board of Finance, received it. So I guess White Sands Beach decided to pave White Sands Beach Road along with your other roads.
Yes.
and is looking for 50% reimbursement of the total from the town
For the, just
for the
just
portion
that.
for White Sands Beach Road.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think in the submissions that either went to the clerk or to the first selectman, I thought Alan had attached some itemized billing. Or
Yeah.
Just that.
That's all I got.
Okay.
I don't know if you got more than that, Tim.
You may not have. I don't
It's
know.
a letter with 2 contractor things attached to it.
No, we just got the last page. It only says 3,500. That's a pretty easy one.
Well, then the road is 72,790, which is rounded to 72,000.
So the challenge we have is we set our budget back in April.
And that's what I was going to say. I mean, I'm sort of an old hat in this.
Yeah, okay.
The government work. Our full expectation is that this would not, whatever you were to consider would not be considered really in terms of any kind of remuneration until July 2nd of 2021. But we just wanted to get this on the agenda, get it in front of people so that if there were questions or concerns, because you never know. I mean, we all are where we are now, but if we had waited until, say, February, and it was February of last year, well, everything kind of shut down completely for 5 months. So, well, let's, out of an abundance of caution, get this moving now.
Yep. I appreciate that.
Knowing full well that their budget's set. This isn't some tree fell on a house type thing. This is, if they can put it into the budget for next year, then great.
I mean, I think we're going to have to look at that as to what past practice has been. I know we've shared expenses on the pump at the entryway numerous times.
Yeah, and this is just sort of a first conversation.
That's good. That's a good. We appreciate that, having an advance notice for the budget.
And I think we historically, White Sand Beach has received a larger appropriation than comparably sized beaches in view of the town's presence. We use the road to get to the beach. There's probably additional security at the gate. But it's probably been about a $3,000 or $4,000 premium every year in a way of the subsidy. I look back at BJ's work on, how the allocations are apportioned, and the real estate which the town owns in the middle of the beach, there's no tax on that for the local mill rate. So that's an element. So it's hard to say how exactly that premium is apportioned. If it were strictly for the road, you could say, well, we've been paying $5,000, $4,000 a year for a lot of years and all that. But historically on these capital improvements, it's been 50%. Now, whether our townspeople use the road 50% of the time versus White Sand Beach, who knows?
Yeah.
But we talked about it at the selectmen's meeting and thought that in spirit of being good neighbors, that it's close enough for horseshoes. So if we could justify assisting with it in the new budget, that might be something more palatable.
Yeah, it might be good if we could fit it within our annual allocation for roads, as opposed to an additional. But look at what we allocate for roads on an annual basis, which is a significant amount.
I was going to ask though, has White Sand ever done that road in the past where the town has participated? Do you have any records going back?
I don't. I did speak to some of the residents there, well, part-time residents there who've been around for quite a long time. And when I said, well, when was the last time the roads were done? I got a lot of, well, gee, it's got to be at least 35, maybe 40 years, but maybe even longer.
Yeah.
So I suspect it was probably, at a time when there probably wasn't even quite the same symbiotic relationship, or if it was done, who knows? Maybe the town did it for all we know. I mean, you never know.
we were plowing them back then.
Right. I mean,
So-
who knows what happened 40 plus years ago. And I know the company that did the work when they were reclaiming, they commented at one point that, it was old stuff they were digging up. So, it's hard to say.
Jim.
My reaction when I read the first paragraph was, I wished very strongly that it read, the association has just received an estimate for work to be done.
Right.
And we hope that the town will help us, join us, whatever. But to tell us, we have just completed the job and we want some money from you, doesn't sit very well with me.
Well, I mean, there were a couple of factors there. One, there were communications with other people in the town before we endeavored into the project. And two, we could not pass up the price. With the shutdown, the paving companies were literally tripping over themselves
To get the
to
job.
stay busy. And in fact, I know that this paving company did this at a small loss because they had to keep their people employed for when the state lifted
Gotcha.
the orders. And so they were literally, when people within the industry found out this is what you're getting per square foot, they were blown away. Because the initial bids that we had looked at about a year before had been at least $1.50 higher. So instead of a project that would have cost us about, it was about $380, I guess, all in, we were looking at numbers in the sixes, and all of a sudden these people came back and said, please, please, please. So we really couldn't say no.
Should have had them do some town roads while they were at it, some other town roads.
We actually, we said, hey, well, we're in there. We're interested in doing the parking lot.
We're in town, yeah.
No one was interested in that, I guess.
Any other questions for Chris? I appreciate it, you coming and being upfront
no,
with us for next year that you're not.
We don't
'cause
expect
if we
any-
wanted to.
We don't expect $1 until July of.
We couldn't vote on this.
Right.
Our
I-
hands are tied for additional appropriations.
I get that. This is just to get on your radar.
All right, we appreciate that. Let me ask you a question. We had heard earlier in the summer that the Old Lyme High School volleyball team had looked to practice down on the beach, and it was turned down.
That was, a conflicts of a couple things. So in my past
I don't
life,
want to put you on the spot now.
and I have no problem. My past life, I was the deputy attorney for the city of New Haven, so I've lived and died with insurance companies. And, when that question came up, one of the first things I did was call our insurance company, and they sort of laughed at me and said, absolutely not. They said, you can't have outside athletic teams on your property without, they're like, if you wanted to do that, we would need insurance from the Board of Education. They'd have to have a coach that's employed by the Board of Education there who would sign a waiver. All the children would have to sign waivers. The parents would have to sign waivers. Like, they just went roadblock, 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 roadblock. And then they said, well, and, with the volleyball net, we'd have to have somebody come and inspect the posts and blah, blah, blah. It turned into this. They basically just said, absolutely not. There's no way you can have an athletic team there because that's not in your policy.
No, it's I don't doubt it. It's just pretty sad that, half a dozen or a dozen kids couldn't go down and play volleyball.
Yeah,
But
I I was in favor of it, but the insurance company, I thought their hair was going to catch on fire with the idea of allowing, but apparently that's where we are in the world at this point.
Pretty sad.
I have a question. This is Anna Ryder on the phone.
Go ahead, Anna.
I have a question about the catch basin and dry well installation costs.
Yes.
I thought we'd contributed to this sort of this area already last year, and it was fairly new, as I recall. Do you have any, I would really love to see the costs that the town has shared and what those things were. I know we were working on the pump for a while, but I thought part of that was this new pump was deeper, and so that whole catch basin needed to be redone. And it was a good cost. I don't remember what it was, and I don't have the number in front of me, but it was a significant cost. And so I was surprised to see the catch basin and dry well installation also included in here.
So where that location is at the bottom of White Sand Beach Road, right near the parking lot. And the engineers came through as they were doing their work, and recommended installation of a secondary catch basin about a third of the way down the road right across from number 30 White Sand Beach Road, which if you're entering the property after you go through the first few speed bumps, there's a little guard shack, you cross over Howard Avenue, and then about the fourth house on the left. And the reason for that was there was a ton of water that was accumulating on that road that was always going to keep accumulating on that road, simply because there were some boulders that sat under on the terrain, so the road couldn't slope the way anybody would want it to, which one led to a lot of ice in the summer, and there's a buildup of snow and ice there, and then just flooding that was residual throughout the year. And so that catch basin has gone in, and so if you go down White Sand Beach Road now, there's not water anywhere on that road, unless it's maybe 2 minutes after a storm right at the bottom. But that's where that second catch basin went in.
So this has nothing to do with the one at the bottom
No.
by the beach that fills with sand that we've
That one's
replaced
been
the
great. And actually with the paving, they did a great job working with the engineer to also do a little bit of bank work with the paving, so that it's sort of pooling where it needs to pool, which probably hadn't been done back 50, 60 years ago. It was just sort of probably slap some pavement down and
move on
and go.
So that has to be
So I
piped
guess
down.
I'm still a little bit confused then about why that catch basin is that in the area that the town is considered uses and pays for? Is that like 50%? I'm just confused about that cost.
It's on White Sands Beach Road, so it's on the road we're talking about with the paving. That is considered the town access to the beach. So, I mean, that's certainly a question. It's a good question. That I don't have the detail. I have that. I don't know what you have. And I've got the letter and that
I have
page
whatever
with the 3,500.
was mailed out.
Yeah, which Tim has another page, I think.
Well, that's for the paving.
Oh, I see. I don't have the other page.
Did this new catch basin have to have piping going down to another catch basin?
It says it goes to a dry well installation, so maybe it just goes to a dry well there, Tim.
Correct.
It doesn't
So
connect.
in the center, if you're looking at that catch basin, it pipes out to, they dug a massive hole underneath the center of White Sand Beach Road, and then it pumps it into that area.
Okay. So that is not connected to the other one, so it's
No,
going to put more water down.
That's got to be, oh wow.
That's a long way away.
It is. It's a long way.
Yeah.
No, that'd be a lot of piping.
So it seems like this is part of the infrastructure for White Sands Beach Road, just like the speed bumps, to keep the ice from freezing on it in the winter and puddles in the summer. Any other questions? So I guess we'll put this in our fiscal year 2022 budget folder and see where, and if it makes sense as we have our discussions in February and March.
Yeah, we talked about it and said, who knows what's going to happen this
Right,
year.
right, that's right.
You never know.
There's just a little mathematical error here. It's sort of like, if you take this and this, it's 37.5, and not that number. I don't know where that one comes from.
Okay, I'll talk to Alan.
You'll get it.
I'll get some more details. But if you have follow-up things, you know how to get a hold of us.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
All right.
Thanks very much
Thank you
for coming out, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Police body camera. Come on down as we thin the room out.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Excellent.
Gee, you don't have your vest on.
I know. Probably didn't even recognize me.
So,
Who's starting? Might as well.
Well, we had a presentation last evening. The legislation that was passed by the legislators, signed by the governor, dictates that body cams are required come July 2021. We have car cameras, but we do not have body cameras except for the trooper. So our 6 officers and 2 part-time officers would need to be outfitted with body cams, which work in conjunction with the vehicle cam when the lights and sirens are activated, he can talk much more about the technology. But it's hopefully going to be some funding, which the trooper will talk about. And I think the very important thing is that our vehicle cameras, the storage of that film, if you call it film, is at Troop F. And the maintenance and FOI and all that stuff is handled by Troop F. It's not something the town has to do, whereas a town police department such as East Lyme or Saybrook would have to do it on their own nickel. So similarly, the body cam images would be stored at Troop F, maybe not for free as they're being done now.
I don't think it's going to be for free, but I think it will be significantly less than if we
market.
reinvented the wheel.
Yeah. So, he'll probably describe the amount of potential grant, and it's not a huge request, but it's one more unfunded mandate type of thing. So, I'll turn it over to the trooper.
Hello all.
Welcome.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm the resident trooper, Matt Weber. So this kind of all got thrown at us, and different portions of the police accountability bill going into effect on different dates. October 1st, there are some certain laws that changed, and the big one that's going to affect us financially will be the body camera requirement. So starting July 7th, all our officers will be required to wear body cameras with every interaction with the public. So there's no avoiding this. So the research that I did, I'm hoping that we can get funding for the Panasonic Arbitrator. That's the one that the state police uses, and that is the one that would be best compatible with what we have with our cameras, our dash cameras right now. And the reason why, like Mr. Griswold was saying, if we have to go to a call, we turn our lights and sirens on, our dash cam would be activated, and at that point the body cam would already be activated as well. So there's no fumbling around with it. Troop F has several spare body cameras as well. So if for some reason one of ours was to get damaged or break or lost, we have something available immediately for a backup that we'd be able to use. These are pretty good cameras. I've used mine now for over a couple of years. They're very rugged. They take a lot of abuse. We've had them thrown on the highway, submerged in water and whatnot, and they stand up. I think even though these are required by July 7th, we should definitely get the ball rolling. Just looking online at a couple different companies that sell them, they're just flat out gone. So the longer we wait, the demand is going to grow higher for these, especially come July 7th. So right now everything's on back order. And also, I think it would show good faith in town that we are complying with state law. And I can tell you from firsthand, the body camera will save you from litigation in the future, from frivolous lawsuits against our officers. So it definitely protects my officers from false allegations of misconduct, use of force, and so on. And so I'm a huge proponent of the body cameras because they saved me personally in the past. So there's a couple different components and hardware that goes with this. So obviously number one would be the body camera. So those generally run, and roughly, these are rough estimates, and I went through our state technology guy, and he said my numbers were pretty well on. So the body camera itself is about $960. So we have 8 officers, so we're going to need 8 of them. Second item that we would need would be a docking station that we could put at the PD, and this allows the camera to be put in the cradle, it charges it, and then it also lets you upload any video to the main, I guess, cloud you would call it. So that is a cost of just under $1,800.
For all
This is one unit, and luckily it has 8 slots in it.
Oh, that's
so
perfect.
It works out perfect for us. The last item for hardware would be a vehicle docking station. So this would be hardwired into the cruisers, and this allows the body cam to be charged And it also allows the downloading of any video that was captured on that shift into our current Panasonic dash cam arbitrator, like micro SD card or whatever they call it. So it kind of twofolds. It charges it and it also downloads, but yet it also creates that capability of when you turn your lights and siren on, it'll also activate your dash cam and the body cam. So it's one less thing to worry about when you're going to a call. Hey, I forgot to turn my camera on. It's done for you. So that's at a cost, and we would need, again, 8 of these. We'll say $260. So again, these are all rough estimates. We also will have to have them installed. So I think it's just the hardware itself. It was a little under, I think around $11,500, somewhere in that ballpark. And again, I'm hoping to get possibly some better prices if we go through a state vendor. Maybe they can chip away at that a little bit, because usually just rough prices that we got from commercial vendors.
So we've got to have, no matter, we don't have a choice.
We don't have a choice.
July 7th, they've got to be wearing them. So
correct. So this is not something extra that we're asking for. It's something that is required. And why reinvent the wheel? We already have the Panasonic cameras. The state's been using this, so everything will flow together. So that's what I would recommend, and they will stand up. We also have to worry about install cost for the docking stations in the car. I'm not quite sure what the install is for this docking station at the PD. I don't know how involved that gets, whether it needs to be hardwired to Wi-Fi or not, so I would definitely add in a little bit of buffer for that too. So that's the initial upfront cost, and then eventually, which I'm still working on the numbers from our state, they don't have any hard numbers yet, would be the state storage, and that's going to be a reoccurring annual cost.
Ongoing,
That's an ongoing cost forever. That's going to be the biggest cost in all of this for the town.
What do we do now with the dash cams?
They're with the state.
And so what does that cost us?
Right now, nothing.
Oh.
But this is going to cost us.
Put this right in there.
Yes.
That's a good
So,
price.
yeah, the other towns have tried that, and I think we're catching on because everybody has to do it right now. So the only good thing, looking through the research, it looks like we're probably eligible for a 30% grant on everything we have. According to the language, distressed towns can receive a 50% grant, and all other towns are eligible up to 30% of the cost. And again, that's early stages, so there's some homework to do to apply for the grants, but that would be a pretty significant savings if we can at least get 30% of the state to pay.
So the unknown number right now is the installation cost for the docking stations in the car.
Correct. And
what you said, 11.5 for that?
11.5 for the hardware.
Yeah.
And then I think that's why last night we rounded it up to 15 for the installation.
Oh, okay. So the docking stations would be $260. Then you said install in the vehicles.
Right.
Did you give a number for that?
No, that's why
That's
we
an
rounded it
unknown.
up to the 15.
Oh.
So it's
And
up to
hopefully
$15,000 for the body cams,
the install,
and if there's any minor installation needed for the docking station, if you have to run a Cat5 wire to the router.
Correct. Which again, I'm not really sure. So it would definitely be appropriate to have that money there.
We do have internet down at the police station, I assume.
We did.
In some capacity.
It's up and running now, so there shouldn't be an issue with that. So that's where we're at. Our hands are kind of tied on this. And then eventually next year I will be coming back for another dash cam because we are getting new police vehicles and we will be short, even though we're taking one out of an older vehicle, it is required to have a dash cam as well, and those run about $5,500.
Right.
So right now we can get away without it, but it's definitely will hit us a little bit.
Do you think the state's going to give us a number on the storage?
Yeah, they're working on it now, Mr. Stegman. Like I said, because they have so many towns right now, or residential towns, like everybody's flooding them. They're like, we're working it out. But the good thing about that, once we dock it and the storage goes to the state, we don't have to worry about it.
Right.
We don't have to worry about the FOI request. It's done. Nobody will have to be in charge of it. So it's worked very well so far with us.
So are they looking for like a deposit?
This
Or are they looking for everything up front?
I think we gotta, I mean, my recommendation would be, we just gotta put the money, allocate the money now, let them order them, because it may be 3-month back order, or whatever. I think we just gotta do it.
It's coming one way or the other.
Nicole?
So, as you know, we have that private duty, police private duty account,
Yep.
where any private duty costs are put in, as well as the building, we put on some money to reimburse for, all the direct costs that we can capture, but there's also fees for administrative and that kind of thing. So, actually, that fund, we just used $6,000 of that fund for one of the vehicles, because it came in, from last year that we ordered, that came in higher than what we had. So we used funds in there, but there's enough funds that we could cover the $15,000 as well. And that's kind of why we put all that activity in one fund, so that we could grow that. We'd use that to go to cars and other things. So.
What do you think is available in there after the FOI?
Oh!
30,000.
30.
Okay. So it wouldn't deplete it?
No.
Okay. Any other questions for Trooper Weber or anybody care?
This is Mary Jo. Can I ask a question?
Sure can.
Matt, I forgot to ask last night, who would be responsible for applying for the grant?
I would imagine I do all the legwork for that and then present it to the finance committee.
Thank you.
It would really go to the Board of Selectmen, wouldn't it? Well,
Yeah, any grant.
any grant.
Yeah, any grant has to go to the boards.
We just spend the money.
Okay. All right.
Oh, so
We'll kick it back to you, Mary Jo.
that's fine. I don't want to miss this grant.
Yep.
Because it's my understanding from what Matt said last night, there was the grant not only for the hardware, but also 30% to 50% for the data storage too.
Down the road, it's okay.
Correct.
Yeah, there was an article today about the grant, and the state has $3 million, and everyone's clamoring right now for the 50% grant, and they haven't allocated for next year that they think is going to be 30%. So getting in front of the line is the right thing to do.
Yeah, well, it's distressed communities are 50%. O-line wouldn't be there.
Well, we're distressed from the COVID this year, so.
I think we should apply for 50 and see what we get.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
an expense that we didn't expect. So.
correct. Yep.
$3 million, unfortunately, doesn't go too far between 169 municipalities. So
No.
front of the line is
Right.
absolutely right, and 50% is right too. Yeah.
Ask for it, and there we go. So I'd entertain.
We want to budget the full amount, and the grant would come
Right.
back.
No, we want to budget the 15,000. So I'd entertain a motion that we allocate 15,000 from the private duty fund
Also move.
toward the body cameras, up to 15,000. Moved by Mrs. Sturgis. Do I hear a second?
Garvin.
Mr. Garvin. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
very much, Matt.
Thank you.
All right.
You think anybody was going to vote no? Who was that?
Well, maybe the people on the phone.
The only word
I heard
from the
that.
Fire department could live in a wood house.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Financial reports.
Financial report. I'm not gonna go through August, I wasn't here in the last meeting, but it's easier just to go through September because year-to-date activity. Property taxes collected year-to-date.
Nicole, would you mind moving up just so these guys, I don't know if you can hear on the phone or not, the Board of Selectmen, or Town Hall, did buy a couple extra microphones for this phone. They haven't taught me how to dial the right phone number, but they did get microphones.
So property taxes year to date are a little over 19 million. That equates to about 54% collected.
Do we have a feel as to how that is historically?
I can't get any information from the tax office on that.
Probably less.
They have no information to give me.
I guess we could all look back at our September 2019 report. I have it in the file somewhere, so.
I've got that, Andy. I'll circulate it if you need.
Yeah, I've got it. It would be, we asked that question.
I can do it. I can run a report comparative. I just don't have.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just your number off here. It'd be interesting to see, if we were at 58% or 49% at the end of September.
Well, of course, this quarter ends the 3% blue light special.
Yeah.
So now we're back.
That ended September 30th?
September 3rd, well, October 3rd or whatever
Yeah, okay.
You'll see for the town clerk, she's got 67% of her budget collected. That's because the increase in the real estate sales have just boosted up all her fees that she has to collect when she does all of her filing. So I expect that to be well over for the year. And in total, we're at 51% for general government revenue. For expenditures under COVID, this is again starting July 1, we've spent $24,300. I just want to make a note to say that there are expenses being charged to this account that are not reimbursable. We are tracking them in that account just to get them all in one spot. But again, not everything that's showing in there is reimbursable by FEMA or by the state of Connecticut. So make people aware of that. And then for the storm that occurred on August 4th, we've spent $12,500, although I did just get another bill for tree trimming, and I think we had to have a crane, so I think it was a good-sized bill. It was at least $3,000, I believe. So those costs are still being accumulated. For the Rangers, you'll see they're over budget due to the COVID costs that are still in there. I have not reallocated them out. I'm still waiting for information from Dave Burge to do that, because he's accumulating that based on timesheets.
So, but as I recall from when Dave was here last, there was an initial report that was due the end of September, and then was that filed? Do we know?
102,000 was it?
Well, that was filed. That was through June.
Right.
Through June.
Right.
That is filed. Again, there are costs in there that may not be reimbursable,
right.
May be kicked back.
That's all right.
But so he has a cost for the Rangers for that time period, but not for July and August and September.
And that report's due end of October?
Well, the thing is, when we submit the 102 to FEMA, they're going to maybe delete some, but we only would get 75% at best of what's eligible.
Yep.
The rest we can submit to the CARES Act.
But not all of it, because that's what I've been doing this week.
Yeah.
A little bit different. He can submit for reimbursement on use of like equipment, vehicles, and that type of thing. I can't do that in the Connecticut module that they give, so that's out. And there's some other things that he has in there that I'm not, the way it's set up, you're not allowed to request reimbursement. Unless I cut a check, I can't enter it into the system. I know it's hard to explain, but the state and the feds came very different ways at this money. So what I'm entering is very, very different from Dave. And the other thing on all that Ranger time, he did an estimate based on input from the Rangers on how much time they spent doing different activities. And he's had to attach timesheets to that. And again, he's just done an estimate and picked certain Rangers. I've got to actually enter days and hours and all of that, and I have no backup at all to verify that any of that time was even COVID related. So mine is pretty specific, and I'm not comfortable in requesting funds for things that don't have backup.
Did we have either FEMA or the CARES Act rules before
Yes.
this all started as to what they were going to require for?
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay.
And going to the next item, we paid debt for principal interest on the town hall bond. When we spent 25% for the general government budget year to date. In carryover, we paid for drawings for, that should be not AP restrooms, but Haynes Park HP restrooms.
A and P, they're
yeah,
close.
so that's my mistake. I was like, what is that? And below that, in miscellaneous revenue, we received some insurance proceeds from the side swiping of one of our fire trucks with a Frontier truck, and that's what that 10,005 is. And the town clerk and the registrar both have received kind of combined money of 5648 to help with costs having to do with absentee ballots, postage, all that stuff. Now we've spent 2,500 already, and they're fast and furious in there, so we might have some overages in the town clerk or the registrar's departments based on all that. So
with deductibles on the fire engine, do we have a deductible to take away from that 10.5?
Yeah, we submitted 11.5, so we got 10.
So 1,000 only?
Correct.
That's pretty good.
And I haven't seen what the cost, I mean, they had an estimate to fix it, obviously, which is where we came up with the 11.5. I haven't seen any repair bill yet, so I'm not sure if that estimate will come in lower than that, and we'd be all right. Otherwise, they'd have to keep the 1,000 in their operating budget. And just some heads up on other stuff that has happened in October. I mentioned already the 6,000 we had to come out of the private duty fund for the new police vehicle. In the bus barn, we also, I can't remember if Ed told me he seal coated the parking lot or he crack sealed the parking lot. But that was a $2,000 charge that the town paid for.
While we're on that, the lease for the bus barn was renewed. We have 2 years of payments to pay off our investment, shall we say. And in the next 3 years, do not include money for the building up money for our account to pay for things at the bus barn. So I don't think any of us really had a role in establishing the numbers for the lease for the 5-year renewal. So it seems to me that when we go through 5 years from now, then we could start charging rent that would recapture some of the expenses we're spending there. So it's been a major frustration because when we set this thing up way long ago, there was money to get our interest on our money that we put out. It was reserves were going to be created to pay for things for the bus barn. All that stuff was washed away over the years, and so now we have to keep track of stuff we're spending, and we'll get it ultimately unless the bus company moves in 5 years. But it's kind of a mess that we cannot recapture some of the money we have to spend to maintain that facility.
Well, it's something we'll have to build back into the next round, but the reason for the extension was that's the length of the bus contract, isn't it? Wasn't that something?
Right, but we didn't have a role in saying maybe when the investment return has been taken care of, we should put $5 or $10 grand a year just to replenish, put into a reserve to fix stuff, because this thing's getting to be 15 years old now.
Yep.
So, little sermon.
That's all I had for.
Any questions for Nicole? While you're here, budget transfers.
Budget transfers. So, if you remember in August,
I have a question. So can I ask? Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Go ahead.
It's Anna. I have a question about the town clerk costs. So, is there a potential that if there's overages past what the Secretary of State's office sent, that we could capture that in whatever format we need to apply for the FEMA grant with that, like the second round of it? Because, I mean, most of that was all, you know, the absentee ballot, that's for COVID, like that may not happen again. So potentially that might be a cost, especially if they have extra hours or something and that's not covered. I just want to make sure we're capturing it in a way that you can then file for it later, because it seems like that's been part of the problem with the Rangers.
Well, I would say that for the FEMA, this would not be covered because, like the time that Phil has put to COVID and some other administrative people in town hall, Dave cannot get reimbursement on paying people straight time. So there are two other people that have helped out in the town clerks, but we're paying them at straight time. So they're not included.
Okay.
So the only way you can get reimbursed is if you pay an existing employee overtime.
Right, so well, you can with the Rangers because that is we hired X amount of Rangers more for just the COVID.
To do that, okay.
But I don't think this will be reimbursed because I think I had Vicki go talk to Dave and I don't think it went well. So maybe down the road there will be, maybe she can get more money from the Secretary of State, but not that I know of at this time.
We've received some little grant money from Secretary of State.
Right.
So they might reduce any award by what we've gotten from the state. Because we got, what, 2,100 on a primary from the state?
We've got
1,000, 1,100, something like that.
We've got 5,600 total between the registrar and the town clerk. They're kind of combining all of that together to work together.
You have to exceed that.
We're almost through that. We'll probably be through that by next week. So.
It's been a horrible burden on the town.
Oh, it's got to be a zoo.
Well, and all the postage. The state was supposed to have an outside vendor do all the postage for all of it, and then just said, this vendor's not working out, here, you guys do it. Yeah, it's been busy in there.
Budget transfers.
Okay, so back in August, when I closed the books for last year, you know, I came to you, we did carryovers, and we did any budget transfers that needed to be done. And then after that meeting, I booked everything that you approved, and then my auditors came in September, so I started writing my audit report. And you know, you enter revenues and expenses, and then it all flows up together, and your balance sheet ties out. Well, my balance sheet wouldn't tie out, and I didn't understand why at the time. And what happened was, after a day of investigation, we did a payroll in July that should have been posted back to June. And it wasn't done correctly at that time. So to correct it, we have to kind of go in the back door of our system and correct it. When you do that, and I didn't know that happened, but when I look back, when you change month year end, especially within fiscal years, you sometimes have to select a function in the system to reset control totals. So like, and I can't really have anything to show you, but you know, if you print a balance sheet, you start with beginning numbers and you have debits, credits equal the final number, but that wasn't totaling across because I hadn't reset. So once I reset everything, I tied out, but my one department was still short money for the budget. Okay. So I know it's kind of technical explanation of it, but it wasn't anything that, you know, was spent additionally or anything like that. It was really just a hiccup in the accounting system. So what I need from the Board of Finance is an additional transfer to the buyback account from the town hall contracted services account of $7,623. And that's exactly the amount of that payroll run.
I'll make that motion, Andy.
Do I hear a second?
Second it.
Mrs. Sturgis, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
There's that sound delay over the phone. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. All right. Old business, Soundview Sidewalk Project update.
Hopefully you received the memos that have been distributed.
Oh, I emailed it, but I made copies of that. I did email it to everybody today.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have it.
Oh, you have it?
Thank you.
Never mind.
So thank you very
I
much.
didn't have time
I
to
got it,
print it
Michelle.
out.
Look at you.
It did.
Yeah, I was doing it, but then I said, okay.
I was already reading much further documents.
Okay, well, the gentleman, Kurt, who was here with Edie Twining, is the engineer of Townview Sidewalks. And we are nearing, the engineering is probably 95% complete, maybe even further along than that. And we hope to go out to bid on the project November or December, so that the contractors can start this work in the early spring. It's not a big job, but maybe we can get somebody to jump on it early and then get on to other things and get a favorable price. So just as a little background here, the town was awarded a $400,000 community connectivity grant to do the sidewalks in Soundview. Initially it was for the Hartford Avenue sidewalks from Bocce up to 156, but subsequently the project was expanded to include sidewalks on 156 from Cross Lane to the police department. It was pretty well understood at that time that the $400,000 would not be sufficient to fund the entire project. So the priority was and is to complete Hartford Avenue sidewalks and do as much of 156 as the construction funds will permit. DSC has been doing the engineering work for a lump sum contract of $40,000. This is now reimbursable, and the town has been paying this and will pay it to the end. In addition to simply sidewalks on Hartford Avenue, there are certain improvements that need to be done behind the sidewalks on private property. If you visualize going down Hartford Avenue on the right-hand side, the properties become lower in the middle and get up toward the old donut shop at Bocce, and there are some drainage issues and it's a chronic problem. So the engineer has estimated the cost of doing the sidewalks and the improvements to private property will cost about $287,000. This includes $52,000 for work on private property, and I don't know how many physical properties there are, but probably 15 or so along Hartford Avenue, some of which the difference between the grade of where the sidewalk will be and where their property is could be 18 inches to 2 feet lower. So it has to be tapered and new driveway aprons, and some people have 2 driveway aprons and they have their own little sidewalks that they have on their own property, and so it's been quite a chore to meet with people, although we've only met with about half of them, to talk about what needs to be done on their property. So the $287,000 includes the prevailing wage rate. Now, ironically, the $400,000 is to install new sidewalks. So the threshold for prevailing wage for new construction is $1 million. it was 400,000 in the past, it went up to $1 million, but for renovation, the $100,000 level was not changed. And I dare say this day and age, $100,000 doesn't do a heck of a lot of renovation to stuff. So we had the engineering firm and our attorney speak with the DOL, Department of Labor, and we got a letter back saying, well, the road exists, and even though the sidewalks aren't installed there, you're improving an existing road. So it's our opinion that it's a rehabilitation instead of new construction. Could we fight it and spend money? I don't know. I think when you're talking to the Department of Labor, they probably have more lawyers than we have. So I think it would be a...
Tim, what do you estimate the difference between prevailing and non?
It's probably a pretty significant delta between the labor cost of one and the other, but given the statement in the letter, I think the committee will have to look long and hard at trying to fight it. So it is in the numbers at this point. In addition, there are expenses which the town must sustain for other work. One of which is the Easy Mart, which is the little market at the top of the street. The curbing which wraps around the Easy Mart and heads to the west on Route 156 needs to be reconfigured, and a right-of-way agreement needs to be, an easement needs to be created. We've talked with the owner, and they're very agreeable about doing it, but it needs a survey and some work, which is going to be $25.50. But this would not be eligible for the grant. Also, the BSC proposal for $40,000 brings us through the bid phase. But as we know, the construction work itself needs to be supervised, so we have received proposals from BSC to do the construction work on once the contractor is selected, which would total $30,000, 15,000 of which is construction eligible or grant eligible, and 15 is not, according to BSC. And we have, I didn't go way back, but I looked back around 18 months of legal, and we paid around $3,657 of legal to Sussman Shapiro for selecting BSC and for working on agreements with homeowners and all kinds of stuff. So, in addition, the state likes to see a contingency for the project, usually 10%. One could debate that number, whether it's fully 10%, but it's got to be something. So I tried to put together where we stand here. So if the grant's $400,000, you can take away in combination the $235 for the sidewalks and the $52 for the improvements, the BSC construction services part, and a contingency. Now the contingency would be held, and at some point as you get toward the end of the project, it would be released because they say, you're getting to the end here, we can't think of anything that's going to be a surprise, so you can use the contingency maybe for retainage or for other things. So it's not like it's lost money, but it's not available at the very beginning to spend as we please. So whether you say, well, our contingency be 10% instead of, or 5% instead of 10%, you could argue that. But so if you take all those away from the 400, it leaves about 58,000 for the 156 sidewalk part, which BSC has designed. We will have the schematics for that. And we do not, obviously, at this point know what a contractor would charge for the job. So if the contractor is hungry, they might charge less than $285 for all this stuff, in which case we'd have more money to do. So the bid would be put out with increments on 156 in bite-sized pieces. So if the thought was if you start at Cross Lane, for instance, where there is a sidewalk going up to the Cross Lane Firehouse in the park, that would be a natural, you could cross the street and head up to Sound View. The other idea is that if you go up the sidewalks to Hartford Avenue, you want to go across, now you want to have a way to get on the other side and go somewhere. So it hasn't been totally figured out, but if we could do it with incremental, say, 300-foot segments of sidewalk on 156, there should not be a lot of behind the sidewalk improvements because you're in a state right-of-way, and once we do that, we're pretty much within the right-of-way, and there's not a lot of stuff we have to do behind the sidewalk to remediate people's property. So if we could say, let's go from Cross Lane in 300-400 foot increments, we might be able to do, if the bid came in favorably, we might have $100,000, say, we could do some work on Hartford Avenue, and it would be a question of where do you do that work. Now, getting away from the actual sidewalk itself, there would be costs that the town of Oline will sustain, which mentioned a little bit, the Easy Mart survey, the BSC non-eligible work for the construction services, and I expect that that's not simply for Hartford Avenue. That would apply to the entire scope of work. So if we could only do 75% of the work, I would hope that 30,000 would decrease as well. If we want to do the legal and pull it back out of the budget and put it in the project, or let sleeping dogs lie where they are. But, you know, the legal this year has been a little nasty because we've done a lot of COVID stuff, and there's just been a lot of stuff with the sewers and everything else. So, you know, we'd love to recapture some of that, but we can see what we want to do with that. And then even the town should probably have a contingency amount in the budget just in case something comes along that we haven't thought of that's not grant eligible. I don't think we have to do anything at this point. You know, we haven't gone out to bid. We don't have numbers from a contractor, but just to sensitize the board that probably to do this project, the town needs to come up with some additional funds on its own in addition to these grant sums. And the money that's been previously, the $40,000 for the engineering, and that could be dealt with in the first quarter, but just this little rundown shows we're about 26,000 that we can think of. And until we get real bids from people at the end of the year, then we can start being a bit more precise about this.
You know, when it's going out to bid in December?
Yeah, I think so. Mary Jo, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
December, that should be a bid time, right?
If you get the easement done, Tim, we're going to get out to bid in November.
November, December, yeah. So anyway, that's a synopsis of where we are, and we're having a public information meeting on Thursday evening. We offered residents, abutters of Hartford Avenue, individual meetings at their property, and I think we had about half of them who took us up on it. We sent certified letters to all the abutters, including Route 156, telling them what we're doing and indicating that there would be a public information meeting, and Frank Papalardo actually walked 156 and spoke to as many of the property owners as he could contact them. So we're trying to get the word out. Not everybody is happy with the advent of the sidewalks, but others are happy. And after some of our individual meetings, I think a number of people thought that it was a worthwhile thing. On the south end of Hartford Avenue, there are a couple of properties which have personal property on our right-of-way, fences, bushes, etc. So we will have to have those personal property items removed, because we can't put a sidewalk if somebody has a fence sitting out there. So we're trying, though we did not have, in one case where there are a number of things, we did not have a personal meeting with the person, so we have to get that squared away. But I think the reception with the people we met was good, and so we're looking forward to this public meeting, and once we have that, then we should be ready to go out to bid.
And there's no reason that the 156 sidewalk couldn't be eligible for a grant.
That's the thought, that either a steep grant or another one of these community grants could be applied for, depending on timing and so forth. So, yeah, we would, and I think the state, according to Kurt, we've come this far, and the state might be very eager to have us finish what we've started. So hopefully we can make that happen.
Well, you would think it'd be good to have a sidewalk on that state road that's pretty busy.
Yes.
Instead of people walking along the side with their coolers and everything else.
No coolers.
Well, those people want to go all the way up to the picnic area.
Yeah.
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 Tim, wouldn't it be a help if you offered to not remove the fence and bushes, but to move them? In other words,
we want the homeowner to move his or her personal property off the right of way. That would be, I think that would
let
be
them
best.
do it and do it quickly.
Yeah, if they refuse, then we get into a less amicable arrangement. But hopefully, people know the right of way exists, and they'll trim their bushes or move their fence. And there's not a lot of stuff in the way.
Oh.
And we're working with one homeowner who has a slight encroachment that should not really be a problem, hopefully. But we're trying to make it clear that whatever accommodation we extend is not deemed to be an irrevocable easement for a fence. So we'll know in another week or so just where we stand with all this. There's not a heck of a lot of stuff in the way, really. About 2 or 3 properties.
Good. Any other questions for Tim? I don't know, Ferry Road sidewalk, or I know there was talk of possibly getting a grant for that.
That's in the report.
Okay, and we can wait for the report. I just thought we were on sidewalks. Because I know if I don't go to the next item, Michelle will get angry with us, because that's approval of minutes from September. Anyone have any modifications for September?
Only adding the dollar sign where it says 68,000 due to the update with COVID.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Just at the end of that long paragraph on page 1. The dollar sign in front of the section, $68,000.
Yes. I put it in red.
Others? For your motion to approve the minutes from the September 15th meeting?
I'll do it.
Mrs. Sturgis, do I hear a second?
Garvin.
Mr. Garvin? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
You're opposed? Okay. Okay. I know it takes a while to take the mute button off. All right. Selectmen's report.
First off, the Soundview sewers. It's been a whirlwind time here, but we have finally received the notarized and signed agreement to join the cost-sharing agreement. That's document number 1. The street easement, which is the easement over town roads and alley, signed, notarized, and the so-called Marata easement, signed and notarized. And very shortly, when we get confirmation from the attorney, we can record the 2 easements in the land records, and we will have fulfilled what we were supposed to do with these three documents. The Marata easement comes with a payment of $30,000 to Long Island Sound Properties LLC. We originally were going to do it that way, and then because of a mortgage holder on the property that was unwilling to subordinate, we were going to go the eminent domain on the parking area to put our pipe in. But in the end, the mortgage holder agreed to subordinate. While the cost might be higher, the unknown is the amount of time it would take to go through the court to get the eminent domain and the various lawyer costs and so forth and so on. Because the way it works is you take 2 appraisals of the value of the easement and you submit that sum to the court, but then you have to go through the machinations of a court process. Because the engineer, which is Fuss & O'Neill, was extremely eager to get this part of it done, we collectively, the 3 beaches in the town, were willing to go the easement route with a simple payment and have it done quickly. So that shared asset part of the project could be put out to bid and started in the spring. And the shared assets consist of a collection pipe which would start at the border of Old Lyme Shores and Old Colony and proceed in a westerly direction across Old Colony, across Soundview, and wind up at the bottom of Portland Avenue. Another pipe would come from west to east from Miami Beach and terminate at the same Portland Avenue parcel where the pump station will be. The pump station itself would be built. That would be a very complex and expensive structure. And from the pump station, a forced main will proceed up Portland to 156, make a right, and head over to East Lyme. But that will require crossing Amtrak Bridge and all kinds of other fun things, and some other highway bridges over watercourses. In addition, there will be an odor control facility. It's going to be a 12 by 14 foot building on the north side of Gordon Avenue that will introduce friendly chemicals to the pipe to keep it the corrosive nature of the material down. So that structure and piping down to 156 will happen. And so that work can start really in the early spring, and we're not sure of just what they have to do is they start at the pump station and work outward. They don't start at the far end and go deep. So they start at Portland Avenue and go one pipe this way, one pipe that way. So one of the issues was the Marata parking lot. When will they get there in terms of May, when the activity starts to ramp up? So it may be that activity won't happen before May, and they'll wait till after the season. I just don't know what, but at least we've got our ducks in a row for the bid and so forth. A big factor is the repaving of 156. They have paved 156 from Fox Hop Yard all the way down to Halls Road, and they want to continue. But we don't want them to continue. And it's unusual to be pushed by DOT to finish something like this, but so be it. So hopefully they will see the wisdom of waiting until this force main pipe comes out of Portland Avenue and goes to East Line. And I don't know exactly when that'll be, but there are people who are close to DOT working to get concurrence in that so that they don't go ahead and redo the road and then say, if you screw it up, you got to repave it, because that could add a big amount for the fee. Let's see, Connecticut Water is there, I think, finishing up on laterals going to properties at this point. They've pretty much done their 8-inch main work, and so they should be done by the end of the year. Soundview sidewalks, you've more or less heard all about that. So we're hoping that this public hearing will occur and we'll answer questions, and we'll be able to put that out to bid. The Haynes Park bathroom building, restroom building, the old building was removed, and the contractor has actually poured the foundation for the new building. The work schedule calls for this to be completed by the end of the year, Christmas, a little past Christmas. And so we were able also to negotiate the electrical service will come from the boathouse building where there's a panel. So there's a conduit that goes from the boathouse to the old restroom, so we'll just continue that up to the new one. The advantage of having it through the school meter there is that if we have a separate meter for the restroom building, we pay in the winter a minimum $45-50 a month. So even though there'd be an upfront charge to put this wire in up to the building, once we're done, you know, electric is taken care of by District 18, since a lot of the use would be District 18 type of use, and so that was agreed to. The Mile Creek Bridge has been substantially completed. There are a couple of little punch list items, but if you've been over it, it's very lovely and much improved, and job well done. McNick had about a 3-week delay by the fabricator of the bridge sections, which he really couldn't make up that time, but not bad. Grassy Hill, the archaeological surveys was completed, and now we must submit documentation to the Army Corps of Engineers, and he said this could take 6 to 9 months. How that's possible, I have no idea. So it's likely we will not be doing that bridge during the season in 21, likely would be 22. So the engineer is speaking with DOT to make sure that the grant for that bid will be modified so that that time frame can be accommodated. The Senior Center Building Committee will be meeting this week, might even be tonight.
It is.
Yeah, and so they've been doing some survey of their users to try to fathom what needs to be done. Not much of a change here. The seniors have contributed $15,000, and 2 towns have approved a total of $15,000 toward this architectural step. But until they get a bit further, nobody's spending any money till they come talk to us. Ferry Road, steep application. We submitted a few weeks ago for $124,000 for the Ferry Road sidewalk. That project was enlarged a little bit to do some drainage work that would be nice to have accomplished. And so we were supposed to hear by the 15th of October, but the OPM told us just hold off a little while longer. So we're hopeful that this will be approved. Halls Road, we heard all about that. And the White Sand Beach capital request, we've heard all about that. So I think that concludes it for any questions.
Any questions for Tim? There is our annual Board of Education joint meeting on Wednesday, November 4th at 6 p.m. over across the street.
In person?
Right now it's in person. They're doing all their meetings in person.
Okay, and this is at the middle school?
No, at Center School.
Okay. Do you know the time?
6. I think it precedes their Board of Ed meeting. I think their Board of Ed's at 7, so the good news is it'll...
Is it one of these workshops again?
Yeah, but I don't think the one thing that Ian said, they're not going to bring any members of the public in.
Okay.
In the past, they've opened it up, and remember last year we had probably about 60 people there, mainly about the tennis courts, but some other things. So November 4th at 6. When I get his agenda, I'll forward it along to people, or anything else I get. We're going to learn about what their drivers are in their budget, which will be the same ones we've probably heard for 15 years.
No, they're going to add COVID to it now. What happens with one driver in the past was going to be security and policing, and that all just seems to go away now, the COVID security.
I guess. I mean, they did hire some extra.
Right.
But, yeah, that was a big part of the discussion a year ago, too. You're right.
Well, they've had an uptick in students due to migration of people out of the cities.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And I understand that some people who have a second home here have decided to move down here for the winter and, figuring a smaller population environment.
Oh, well.
Yep. What can we do? Anything else? Certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that.
Thank you, Mrs. Sturgis. Do I hear a second? Mr. Garvin, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks all of you online.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, good night.
Good night.
I heard, that the Verada thing, they realized that they're probably only going to get half the 30,000. That made it jump.
Well, not only that. Not only that.
I think our ancestors who invented these chairs for adults.
Or they had cushions or blankets or...
No matter how...
They don't... Yeah, it doesn't fit.
Yeah, if your back gets hurting in the middle and you just move a little bit, your neck gets
No, those
stiff.
are more comfortable.
Yes, they are. I think we ought to trade.
Put these out there, nobody will stay long.
Yes, absolutely. I'm all for it.
3 beaches, 2 representative each. It's been challenging.
Especially under the situation.
But they've been really quite, the beaches have been very good. They've been playing nice. They haven't been trying to pay pounds of break and all that
Thanks, bro.
Great. Yep.
You doing okay on the leg?
Still attached.
Parrot helping you? Is the parrot helping you?
Who?
The parrot.
Yeah.
Is that thing still alive?
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna outlive you, right?
Ice water, coach pride.
What about diving in the winter?
I don't take her out too often because.
It's not every morning he comes up, and as soon as the sun's up, he comes flying upstairs.
Yeah.
You know, has to have a conversation. I don't know why. You got plenty of seed down below, you know.
Does he bite you?
Huh? Only if you pick on him. You know, pull your tail too hard or something, you know, turn around and let you. There's a lot of pockets. I have two of them when I found them both outside.
Really?
Yeah, outside.
So they got away from somebody and.
Yeah, some father left the door open, you know.
They didn't ban them or anything? Were you?
First one was banned. And he was hand raised and he was trouble with church rockets and all kinds of stuff.
But could you go to wherever and find out where the bird is
With
ready?
abandoned, I advertised them, you know, and then, I like the little guy, so, whatever.
That's funny. My grandparents used to have two parakeets. And they'd fly around the house. And my father taught one of them to say, my grandmother's name was Nellie. He taught one of them to say, shut up, Nellie. Fly around the house and shut up, Nellie. He worked long and hard at that.
He lived to tell about it, huh?
To tell about it.
Boy. Excellent. Good. All right.
Thank you.
Won't be long before we start.
See you next time.
Minus budget.
Exactly, that's how I feel about it. It's so strange. It's so like, one of our biggest dinner nights was dinner was out at the beach. It was great.
Yes, that really was done so well.
Unless we can keep doing those little pockets, otherwise I'm here.
We have a shirt on the old thread.
Yes.
Not look at all, absolutely not at all, that long, look at all. You know, color all